Yo, what's shaking, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Orangebloods Modcast. I'm Geoff, Anwar, Jason, Alex. I'm not all of us, but we're all here. Welcome to the chat. Welcome to the show. Do us a solid, like the channel, subscribe to the channel. Get us to 12,000. I'm tired of being in the 11,000s. If you could help us with that. And by the means, join in. We'll do our best to not have today's show featuring a player parent, unless Jordan Addison's parents are out there. Before we get too deep into Jordan Addison discussion, portal discussion, all of the stuff that's kind of relevant and hot today, I do want to remind everybody that this edition of the Orangebloods Modcast brought to you by myperfectfranchise.net. That's Alex's guy. It's all of our guys, actually, but we do love us some Andy. If you're ready to change your life, if you are ready to run your own business and not work for the man anymore, look, there's a lot of success stories on Orangebloods from people who've gotten Andy's help. Check it out, myperfectfranchise.net. The phone number's on the screen. Alex, real quick, you love you some Andy, right?
Oh man, there's no one quite like Andy, dude, at all. Yeah, man. He takes me fishing. He's an all-around great guy, man.
He'll take you fishing too as part of like helping you with your franchise launching. All right, fellas. So the story of the day, and it's been percolating a little bit over the course of the last few days. You've seen whispers of this. Jordan Addison, All-American wide receiver from Pitt, the Biletnikoff Award winner. Brennan Marion's former protege at Pitt puts his name into the portal last week, I guess the weekend, and I guess technically it was Tuesday. My God, it's Thursday, but it feels like the draft. No, I don't know how you feel about this, Alex. The draft feels like, I don't know, a month ago. And technically, I guess it was in April, and it was a month ago. But all of the events from this week have aged me like 7 dog years. Jason, I'll come to you first because you are the crotchety old man. I just kind of want everybody's, before we dive into the like minutia of what's going on potentially with Jordan Addison in Texas, your thoughts on this story emerging as a thing on a Thursday in the Texas football universe.
Surprising on a number of levels. You get Xavier Worthy to stay after there were some flirtations there early in the week that, presumably cost a pretty penny, NIL money. So now they're, if you're going to get Jordan Addison, he's not coming for free. It's going to be a significant amount of NIL money that's going to take landing him. And then, fantastic player, right? You don't turn down Jordan Addison, the Biletnikoff winner and potentially high first-round draft pick. Like, how many footballs are there to go around? And you got Addison, you've got Xavier Worthy, you got Isaiah Nayor, you've got the tight ends, you've got Jordan Whittington. What are you going to do with your running game, man? Your running game is supposed to be your feature of this offense with Bijan Robinson and Roschon Johnson. So, I think you can't turn him down. But, if you're Texas, there are other programs that need Jordan Addison more than Texas does. So I can kind of understand them investing all this NIL money, maybe a little bit more than I can if Texas winds up going down that route. But you can't turn down the best receiver in the country. But it's an interesting fit if it all comes together for Texas. And I think there's still a lot of steps to be taken there for it to come together. But it'll be really interesting to see how that puzzle comes together in terms of the pieces on the offense.
Anwar, it's interesting. I'll toss it to you, kind of the same thing. I would just say, isn't it? I don't want to correct Jason, but I don't know if it's so much Texas turning him down as it is actively pursuing him. It says, I think, a lot about, I don't know, what they want, what their ambitions are. It's not their biggest need. That they don't care, weirdly speaks volumes to me.
It's almost like fantasy football at this point, right? You're just trying to get all the great offensive talent that you can get. The only thing I would say is, like, within this whole NIL spending thing, at some point it would have probably been good to spend some money on some offensive linemen. If of all the things that you kind of need, That's probably the thing that you probably need find out who the best guy was and somehow convince that person to go in the portal. You probably could have gotten way cheaper and really helped out a position of need. But I'm with Jason. You know, if Jordan Addison is interested, first of all, if you're Jordan Addison is going on the market, you put out a feeler, right? And you just kick the tires and see would he be interested. He's interested. That's fine. You continue. You go with the conversation. But yeah, when you start talking about what Jason was alluding to with Xavier Worthy, you've got Isaiah Nayor that's here. You just signed Ajay Hall. You've still got Jordan Whittington that's here. You've got Brendan Thompson that's coming in. You still got Jaleel Billingsley. You've got Jatavian Sanders. You've got Gunnar Helm. You've got Bijan Robinson. You've got Roshan Johnson. You've got Keelan Robinson. Like at some point, it's like, all right, you're kind of full. I mean, you're kind of full. But you know, if the goal is screw it. We ain't gonna be that great on defense. Let's just score a lot of points and just call it a damn day. Then if that's what it takes, like so be it. I guess you give Quinn Ewers as many weapons as possible. So I mean, look, if Jordan Addison wants to come and it's obtainable, you make it happen. You do what Texas needs to do. You flex. You tell everybody else, go home, you spend the money, and you bring the guy in. But, you know, position of need, no. But if you can get him, so be it.
Alex, batter up.
Well, I think that Jordan Addison is definitely not a player that you can afford to turn down. That's the first thing. So this is not – I won't make this an anti-Jordan Addison take or one that – you know, I don't think Texas should be in the market for him or, you know, should not be going after him. I think that would be silly. You have the opportunity to bring in a guy who's arguably, you know, thought of as I guess pretty much maybe inarguably the best wide receiver in the country. I mean, if he won the award last year, he's probably the best.
He's number one.
So you could bring him in. I just wonder from Addison's standpoint, even if Texas, let's say Texas were to offer him up $2 million or something, you know, just something crazy, right? If they were to do something like that, how much does he weigh that against the future draft capital of the fact saying like, okay, I go to this depth chart that has, you guys have already mentioned them all, but Xavier Worthy, that has Isaiah Nayor, that has Jordan Whittington, that has coming in a guy like Brendan Thompson, that has Ajay Hall, that has, there's Troy O'Meary will probably be back by then, and all these guys are probably guys that Jordan Addison sends to the bench. And I get that. I understand that. I understand why from Texas's point of view, it's like, well, it doesn't matter if we can get a better player and we're going to get the better player in, right? It's just, that's how we're going to work this thing. But if you're Addison, don't you think to yourself, what happens if I go to a team with all this competition for targets? What happens if I go to a team with this inexperienced quarterback? And I understand, he's from Pitt. So his old quarterback, Kenny Pickett, is now gone. He's going to have to be an inexperienced quarterback there as well. But wouldn't you want to go someplace where the depth chart's a little bit more wide open to where it's like the last thing that you give scouts is not going to be something where it's like, boy, he won the Blitnikoff in his second to last year, but boy, he really had a down year that last year. It just feels like coming to a place like Texas, not because he necessarily would have a bad year, but even if he were to maybe get to if Worthy and Whittington and Nayor do anything close, and without even getting into the Billingsleys or the JT Sanders or all the rest of them, do anything close to 75% of what fans hope for this year, it's just the law of the conservation of targets. There's only so many targets to go around, right? So, I mean, it might feel like a statistically down year with a lot of people maybe not taking that nuance into consideration whenever talking about sort of his career arc. And those career arcs that end with the downslope at the very end can sometimes be things that scouts get hung up on. So that would be something that I would think about.
Alex, I think they're almost certainly selling him on the idea of the 2020 Alabama offense, right? So it's, hey, how do we negotiate reps and balls to 3 first-round draft picks at wide receiver? I'm the guy that makes that happen. I think that's Sark's, I think that's the thing that he sells is we can take you and Xavier Worthy and anybody else, and if I've proven that I can do it. So I think that's point number one. And you know that meme of the guy who's like pointing at his head, and you know that meme.
Yeah.
I think he says, you know what? Go to Alabama if you want to. Go to USC or whatever. But who else is going to have a defense so bad that you're always going to play in the fourth quarter, and we're always going to need more points, and we're always going to get more possessions because our defense will make sure that we're constantly in need of throwing you the football. There you go. That's why Texas hasn't improved the defense through the portal so they could get to this point with Jordan Addison and say, where else would you want to go other than to the guy leading the offense that led Alabama to a national championship, and there's no great defense to snuff out your workload in the third and fourth quarters because we're going to need it. There you go.
But Alex, I mean, I think that the key to this whole situation is, Jordan Addison is if he stays at Pitt, is probably still a first round draft pick. So I don't think it's about situation. He's got someone in his ear that's told him like, this is what your value is. And really, I think it's for Jordan Addison, it's not about where he's going to be in 2023. It's about 2022 and getting paid now. So it's more about, hey, can I get $2 million? Can I get $3 million today and be good? Can I over a certain month period? And so if he feels like I feel good about my draft stock, I'm already the best receiver in the country. That's been established. There's an award that in my living room that says I'm the best guy. What I don't have right now, though, is about $2 to $3 million in my pocket. Sure would like to have that. To me, this is what it's all about. Who's going to pay him?
Yeah, Addison Anwar makes perfect sense, right? I mean, he can get paid, which is the most important thing, let's be honest. But secondly, he can improve his position if he makes the right choice. He's going to be breaking in a new quarterback, or they'll be breaking in a new quarterback at Pittsburgh. So, he goes to a place, I don't know that Texas is the right place for him, but if he does pick the right place, let's say it's USC and he's their top receiver, and they've got a pretty good quarterback that's proven himself, and he gets $3 million in his pocket. I mean, it's a no-brainer for him to enter the portal and to leave. I just don't know, kind of like Alex said, I don't know that Texas is the right spot for him. But hey, if the Texas coaches can make it happen, and everybody else behind the scenes can make it happen, more power to them.
Let's set the table for kind of how all of this has played out. So, in talking to sources this week, it seems like Texas and Addison's people, reps, there was some sort of conversation taking place behind the scenes. And I think that was potentially a fallback option for Texas should anything have happened with Xavier Worthy last week. And in the end, everything with Xavier Worthy in Texas is perfectly fine. He seems satisfied with the NIL money that the Texas has been able to put in front of him, so much so that he's not testing the waters. Was a little bit of fear, though, that maybe they might be in a position where they would need this is a different conversation. It's like you add Jordan Addison to Xavier Worthy, but there's a world out there. There's an alternative universe that exists where they need Jordan Addison maybe more than anybody. If in this alternative universe, Xavier Worthy is testing the NIL waters in a way that, quite frankly, Jahdae Barron was tempted to do coming out of this weekend. And obviously he pulled his name out of the portal before it was ever actually in the portal. When Worthy stabilized, I was told that the communications between Addison and Texas kind of stopped. The thought process was that he wanted to be at a place where he would be the main guy. And I'm not so sure that Texas had the vibe from him that he wanted to play in the same offense with Worthy, that he kind of wanted to be the guy. Although it is interesting, USC's got good receivers too. So all these options he seems to be looking at are schools that are loaded at receiver. At some point this week, I was told it went from long shot to it's at least a consideration. There are people in the chat are asking things like, hey, is this potentially just cover for USC to make them not look as bad as they did this weekend? Sure. It could have easily been USC and Texas in that headline from the weekend, though. This contact with, I think, his representatives has been ongoing for more than the last couple of days. And Anwar, like where it is this exact moment, I think remains to be seen. I don't think there's any negotiations or anything taking place. I think they're in the actual recruitment phase of like, who does he want to play for? And then I feel like there's kind of an assumption that the NIL dollars, whatever they may be, will be there once he makes his decision of where he wants to go. And I think the betting favorite has to be USC, but I haven't gotten a sense from Texas people on more that they feel that it's quite like that. I think that they feel like they're at least got a puncher's chance at this thing.
Well, as they should. It's interesting that, when people are talking about like tampering, I seen that in the chat, or, looking good or not looking good. Guys, this is all legal. Like nothing is being done that's illegal. This is not a brown paper bag kind of thing. This is a legal thing that's set that allows this thing to particularly happen. It's new. And so I think you're used to the old mindset of, oh, they're paying players. It's like, yeah, actually they are. And oh, this guy transferred because he wants to get paid. Yeah, that's kind of what happened there. That's true. Oh man, USC, somebody from USC contacted one of his peoples and one of his reps. Yeah, that's kind of what happens. Like so you got to take that old mentality out there. And yeah, if you're Addison, I can make an argument why Texas makes sense even outside of the money. And look, I feel like the money is the motivation, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like I think we all wake up motivated to make money. So, of course, Jason just works here because he just loves it. And
no,
Jason,
20 years of free labor, you bet.
That's why he's always my favorite, Anwar.
I can make a case that you're going to come into a Big 12 that you're going to be stacked with offensive talent. You get to play with a running back that's a future NFL prospect, two running backs that are future NFL prospects that can take some weight off you. I can make an argument that you're probably going to get a lot of one-on-one coverage here, and no one's going to be able to really single you because you've got Xavier Worthy on one side, and you've got a ton of other people, that everyone's gonna have to contend for, and you've got a quarterback who, maybe he's unproven, but he's pretty damn good. And I tell you what, if he's a 5-star that only has to worry about throwing into single coverage, as opposed to being a young quarterback that's got to worry about double coverage, I like his chances. I like his odds in that. So yeah, there should be a puncher's chance. Is he talking to multiple people just to drive up a price and stuff like that? Sure, but Ketch, I could give you a good argument that how it makes sense for him and how this could be a potentially a good fit.
Yeah, I think that, quite frankly, this kind of ambition is what I think Texas should be doing in NIL. And I would go one step further. Like I think this time next year, we'll see schools, including Texas, doing what I'm talking about. But, force a kid into the portal. I mean, the thing is, the way that NIL is set up, and I don't know how you regulate this, it's not like you can tell a kid his representatives can only talk to people from your hometown, right? It's not like when name, image, and likeness is not restricted to an area code. So everybody around the country is free to reach out to some car wash in Detroit wants to give Jordan Addison money to, like, there's nobody to say that he can't take it, right? It'd look weird. It'd be like the Chico's bail bonds thing from the Bad News Bears. You wouldn't completely understand. You'd have logos all over the uniform. But so it's really easy to reach out to representatives and say, there's a world out there where maybe you could make $700,000. What are you making right now in NIL at whatever school you're at? And if the answer is a whole lot less than that, then your NIL people say, well, look, I can't speak for our coaches, but I can pretty much tell you that, if you came to Texas and went into the portal, like there would be a high 6-figure deal for you. That's not tampering right now. That's just communication between representatives and potential sponsors. So I don't know that Texas did enough of that this offseason. And the reason why I say that is they still have glaring holes at defensive end, edge rusher, linebacker. We know they'd like to fill some of these spots. And I think this time next year, you will see this happen a lot more. You'll see guys finish the season and put their names into the portal at schools all across America just to see what's available. I think that if you're going to do NIL, you might as well do it better than everybody else. And I think that the schools that are involved with Jordan Addison right now feel like the schools that are the most proactive and aggressive on the NIL front. There are a lot of things that I say that Texas should do. This is one of them. This is me saying, if you have it, you need, and this is why I say they need to have a general manager, because you need to know where every kid in the state of Texas that's signed elsewhere, you need to be following them. 32 guys got drafted from the state of Texas this year in the draft, Alex. None of them from Texas. But these are all guys that,
but two came from the University of Texas system. UTSA.
Keontae Ingram should count half a guy, right?
Okay, right. Yeah.
But I think that Jason, I think, hates what I'm talking about. I think he cringes at the thought of this turning into legitimate NFL level free agency.
NFL unrestricted free. I mean, there's at least in the NFL, there's some restrictions and there's some guidance to it. This is just free for all, whatever you want to do. So
well, I think the
one guy I talked to, he compared it to baseball. It's more like baseball free agency, where you can have your Yankees and the Red Sox and this and that, and then you have like your Rays or something to that effect.
Even in baseball, that's true. But even in baseball, there's a tax. If you go over a certain thing, you got to pay some taxes.
But you can pay whoever you want and however you want.
Yeah.
NFL has a salary cap.
Right.
The winner in this potentially, though, has to be all, I think, power conference schools. I mean, I don't think Nebraska fans are sitting around complaining about NIL this month. They're looking at how it helped them get O'Shawn Mathis. We don't have to relitigate that. We know it wasn't the only reason why at the end of the day, O'Shawn Mathis ended up going to Nebraska, but that was a part. And
same for Casey Thompson to a certain degree as well.
I mean, all of these kids that have transferred feel like they feel like they've come out on the other side of this with better deals for themselves. And I think no matter, it doesn't matter. You could be Baylor, Texas Tech, anybody. I mean, this reaches, depending on how prepared you are to be aggressive and to go after key targets in, essentially recruiting. All of these schools have a chance to use this to their advantage, where a school like Texas has an advantage maybe over other schools, maybe not all schools, but over a lot of schools, is if Jordan Addison is going to be a $2 million guy. And by the way, I do have some reservations that Texas would go quite that high, but maybe. If he's going to be a guy that's going to make that kind of money, there are only so many schools in the country right now that are organized well enough in NIL that they could probably pull that off right now and have shown an appetite to do so. I think everybody's going to use this moving forward. And the schools that get poached are all going to be – everybody's going to get poached. I mean, it's going to kind of be the new wave. I would just say the upside, Jason, if I was trying to sell you on liking this more than hating it, every school in the country, let's say Power 5 program, although I would say even the University of Houston, we were joking if they ever used Mattress Max money, what could they do? If you have holes in your roster that high school kids can't fix, every school in the country has the capacity, potentially, to be able to improve themselves through a new way of acquiring talent, that the rules are the same for everybody at this point.
It's not the same. It's not equitable. I mean, TCU can't do what Texas can do, and Alabama and Southern Cal and Texas A&M can do. I mean, it's going to further divide the.
But if you're TCU, there are levels where you can still go out and improve your team from what it would have otherwise been, even if you're not spending on the level of other schools. You know, if TCU looks at their roster right now and says, my God, we could use X, Y, and Z at various positions on our roster, they still have the capacity to go out and get players at other schools that they wouldn't have otherwise had. And, you know, look.
It just won't be Jordan Addison. They'll be taking the receiver.
Correct.
They'll be taking probably a receiver from Central Florida, who's a really good player for Central Florida, but it's not the same. I mean,
Well, you know who crossed my mind, Jason, and Alex, jump into this. I'm shocked that the kid the Cowboys took in the first round, Tyler Smith, that guy was that guy came out after his third year at Tulsa. So it's not just a shock that Tulsa produced a first-round offensive lineman when Texas can't produce any drafted linemen. And I think Tulsa had a couple of linemen. But this guy came out. It's kind of unprecedented that an offensive lineman from the state of Texas, coming out after 3 years in college as a redshirt sophomore out of Tulsa, usually that doesn't happen. In a world where Tyler Smith doesn't go pro, right? But he decides, I need one more year of college because maybe the feedback that he got would have been like a third round. I wonder who's in play for that kid coming out of Tulsa. If Tyler Smith puts himself into the portal, I wonder who that TCU might be in for a kid like that. I mean, it might be, this is where your scouting department and knowing, oh yeah, no, that guy's a legit NFL prospect, I think is really going to matter moving forward. You're going to have to know these kids and how good they are before they're in the portal, because more likely than not, they're going to already have had conversations about who they're interested in.
Or with agents too. Like they have to talk with the agents, like the NFL agents versus the NIL agents, I guess. Because with you mentioned the Cowboys and Tyler Smith, like the Cowboys also took Jalen Tolbert out of South Alabama. Jalen Tolbert came out after his junior season from South Alabama. You know, it's like, I mean, he could play in the Senior Bowl because he graduated early, but I mean, he was still a junior whenever he came out. Western Michigan, Sky Moore out of Western Michigan got drafted by the Chiefs in day 2. He came out after his junior season.
He maybe could have made more money by transferring to Alabama.
Bingo.
Seriously.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. It's an interesting thing to think about. I'm sure that there's also the stuff though about, well, if you do the NIL stuff, you know, you got to buy the insurance and you got to do, you know, as opposed to, you know, I would think these guys would kind of take the bird in hand if they get a day 2 grade from the NFL advisory committee, right? I mean, they take the bird in hand. Saying, I'm going to get a multi-million-dollar payday here is what they're telling me. But yeah, I think that somebody made a good comment in the chat. It's like NIL could lead to a lot of these guys not coming out early. They shouldn't be coming out early. You know, I mean, imagine if like Brennan Eagles had NIL available to him. Did Eagles come out early? I forget. Little Jordan Humphrey. You know, I'll bet you Texas would have come to the table with some NIL money for him. So it'll be interesting to see. It's a good point that I hadn't really thought about before, but it sure does make a lot of sense.
I think I can sell Jason on NIL. I watch what I do here. I believe I've got it.
Go for it.
So Jason, I spoke to one of my sources who was did some NFL stuff, NFL exec last night for a long period of time, and one of the benefits he talked about, he brought up a guy that Ketchum may know the name, Florida A&M linebacker Isaiah Land. And he's a guy that led the nation in sacks last year with 19 sacks, 25.5 tackles for loss.
Texas has reached out, by the way, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so without NIL, without transfer portal stuff, that's a guy who's probably stuck at FAMU for his entire career, and then he's got to hope that someone maybe sees him, gives him a chance, and he's stuck there. He now has the benefit for a guy who, whether he's a late bloomer, clearly probably wasn't high on recruiting rankings to go to Florida A&M, but now has an opportunity to advance himself, to maybe become draftable, right? And to go from a small program to a big
He
program.
would get drafted if he stayed at Florida A&M. 19 sacks is going to get drafted.
Yeah, potentially.
No.
But we've talked. Hold on. We just had what was it? Just a year ago, no one from an HBCU got drafted at all. Jason, remember Deion Sanders was complaining about how egregious that was. So let's not say that that's guaranteed, because we know that level of football is overlooked and not really highly regarded amongst NFL draft circles. So this guy has an opportunity through transfer portal, make some money to improve himself. And that, when we get caught up in the 2 millions and the 3 millions and like the big headlines, but there's smaller headlines of guys improving their way of life and improving draft stock that ends up being positives.
It's a good point, and I do wish that young man well, and I hope he finds success and betters his situation and makes some money. My only thing is, you guys are making it sound like I begrudge the players getting paid. I don't. I just wish there were regulations. Maybe set a cap, so that maybe
antitrust laws won't allow you to set a cap.
It would be tough.
When you out the bottle, you can't just. The NCAA would not want to go down that route.
Yeah, man, those are the words that you don't want to hear, man. I'm from the NCAA and I'm here to help. That's like, you don't want to hear that. Right?
Other people have said, hey, regardless of when you enter the transfer portal, you have to sit out the 1 year. And I'm like, okay, that would help things. That would help. You would lessen guys, holding their schools hostage, so to speak. But the young man you were speaking of, Anwar, that doesn't benefit him if he would have to sit out a year. So I don't know what the answers are, man. I just know this thing has exploded beyond my wildest dreams, and it's spiraling out of control, and they've got to find a way to rein it in.
Is it out of control? Because who's it hurting?
Yeah, it's out of control. And it's only going to get worse.
Who's it outside of the coaches who
fans
have lost? In what way? How
look at our
Jordan
message
Addison
board.
hurt?
Put a poll on our message board. If people are losing interest, it's Hellcat.
But you know what, Jason, you're right. I went to prove this point the other day. I went to 12 different message boards.
I saw your screen cap.
Schools all over the country in different conferences at different spectrums of. I went to other networks, like our Baylor message board's not very good, so I went to the one Baylor. What is it? I can't remember. Baylor 365. I'm not sure which one it is. I went to the Baylor message board. Nobody else anywhere in the country is talking about NIL with as much angst as the Texas fan base is. I say that just based on internet chatter, right? Like maybe at the water cooler, there's a lot of angry people. But if you go by message board conversation this weekend, Texas fans were screaming fire in a crowded theater, and I agree with you. Like, it kind of sucks for us right now because Texas fans really seem bothered by all of it. But this isn't a conversation. If you go to the Baylor message board, there's like one NIL post. And I think now, to be fair, if I remember correctly, it had like 175 replies and like people were engaged in it. But there wasn't like.
Depends on when you look. If you look at that Baylor message board when their star, whoever, quarterback or receiver is flirting with other teams, it'll be a hot topic, I promise.
Well, it's going to be a topic everywhere. College football is changing. The thing that I'm really curious about is I think about the NFL. I think about all professional sports. When free agency hit, now this is a generation ago, right? So it's almost a conversation that none of us can engage in because it was slightly before all of us were born. But when the Kirk Floods of the world were emerging, when the idea of free agency was becoming a thing in sports, I can even remember in the mid-'80s when Sports Illustrated listed all of the millionaires in Major League Baseball like on the front of the cover, and it was like, look how money is changing the game. There was a lot of freaking out about the sanctity of the sport being changed for the worse. But I think about Alex spending the weekend at the draft last weekend, and I think about how for a lot of people, the draft and free agency is more exciting than the actual games. And I do wonder if when this is all said and done, I wonder if in 5 to 10 years, it makes college football more popular because in a weird way, the chaos that it potentially brings is kind of interesting to watch from afar. Jordan Addison's recruitment, like as crazy as recruiting is, the eyeballs watching what's happening with him right now surpass what even happens in college football recruiting, where some people don't even want to learn the names of kids. They just don't want to be bothered by it. But a guy like Jordan Addison's almost a household name in college football. And just like with Caleb Williams, it does make the sport more interesting potentially to me.
Gives us something to talk about, right?
What's that?
It gives us something to talk about in the
It
offseason.
really does. And
it could come into iterations like where people, like you mentioned U of H earlier. And what if it was something like fans like Texas, let's just say Texas was in a bidding war with somebody else and, fans were, I don't know, is like Red McCombs still alive? I'm just trying to think about the biggest name donor. Say it's like Red McCombs versus like Tillman Fertitta or something. And they're both going at it. And Texas is complaining about how McCombs didn't step in. Like it gives people an extra thing to follow and almost an extra thing to root for and all the rest of this stuff. So
it's interesting.
I think
interested to see, sorry, Alex, but like 2-3 years from now, if nothing changes, are these big money boosters going to get tired if they don't see the return on their investment? What if Texas pays Addison $3 million and he comes here and the team goes 6-6? I mean, I don't know. I'm just fascinated. I don't know the answers, man. I'm just fascinated.
Boosters in the SEC ever stop giving suitcases full of money?
Yeah, we're not talking millions.
And
maybe
their hangers on. Guys have been getting hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah,
for a long time.
Yeah.
Albert Means 20 years ago, Albert Means, his high school coach was asking for $25,000 just to bring Albert Means to a summer camp. And he was getting it. So, the reality is that college football has been involved in a money war for a long time. It's what makes Nick Saban's comments about some of this so, preposterous, because it's like, look, Nick, I'm not going to say that you're not the greatest coach of all time. Don't take this as a slam. I love the work that you do at Alabama, but we're not going to live in a world where Alabama's never given anybody a bag of money, are we? Come on, let's not pretend. This kind of brings it more out into the open. I think from a Texas standpoint, Anwar, the legality of it all is what has Texas so interested in it. Texas has historically not wanted to be dirty. Now, I think, and Jason, if you said it feels dirty right now, I won't disagree with you, right? It does. I think I can even concede it feels a little dirty because it's so new. But the bottom line is it's not illegal. And if Texas ends up securing a commitment from Jordan Addison, they'll do it in large part by giving him a lot of money in a way that has been deemed legal. And man, if it's legal, then go do it, right? I mean, we talk about being in the gray area all the time. It's pretty gray.
It does feel dirty, but it's legal, so whatever. But, let's say Baylor does a good job like they did last year of finding and developing talent. The way things are now, those players aren't staying at Baylor, not unless Baylor has some huge NIL initiative that I'm not aware of. But, Baylor better count.
To be fair, Baylor's lost fewer players in the portal this year, 6, than all but 4 teams in all of college football. Just a random fact. If you'd have said anybody else, Jason, I wouldn't have had that fact ready to go. But Baylor, weirdly, no portal issues.
Yeah, they had a bunch of them drafted, though. If those guys were juniors instead of seniors, they'd be probably bolting to go elsewhere. So
maybe, but I mean, Baylor's got boosters too, and
every school has boosters. But I mean, you know what I'm saying, that they don't have the boosters that Alabama.
I don't think we're talking about the kind of money right now that's so crazy.
We're talking millions, dude, for Addison.
Oh, I know.
God,
that's what the pool, the talent pool of major college programs in $1 billion business. That money should be in the millions. That's what the players should be getting. Now, quite frankly, they should be getting money from the NCAA for their billions that they've had to go outside and just focus on NIL alone is the reason why the NCAA ain't going to do anything about this. Because they're like, hey, if Jordan Addison can get $2 million from USC and he doesn't even think once about a lawsuit against us, a class action lawsuit with like 100 other players because they want some of the next TV money or whatever, like the NCAA is going to stay the hell out of the way. But the bottom line is, I mean, if this was professional sports, which it kind of is, the players would be getting a big lion's share of the money. This is a bit of a racket, so they've never had the money shared with them. But, you know, I don't begrudge them the amount of money they're getting because they should have been getting pieces of that money a long time ago.
Catch, let me jump in what Corey's saying. What he's saying, the NCAA is about to crack down, and that is so incorrect. That is not even close to remotely being true. They're not going to crack down. And the NCAA has created this for everything that Catch said. They've created this thing based off of what happened with the Ed O'Bannon case, based off of guys suing them and saying, "Hey, you can't just inhibit our ability to make money off of name, image, and likeness." Now, has it become a little bit more like pay for play? Sure, absolutely. Is there a gray area? Absolutely. But one of the things I'll have in the war room this evening, I'll just give you a little bit on this. I talked to a coach this week, and he said they at the coaches convention, the NCAA made it very clear: the further away it is from the field, the less they are going to care. Now, the more closer it is to the field, the more they're going to care. So, in other words, the guy who's got like, you know, some little assistant guy, some analyst guy who's doing stuff in practice, they'll care about that. But something that's way down the line, like NIL with some, you know, some dealership is wanting to offer somebody something, they don't care. They don't want no parts of this. They don't want to go to. They don't want another lawsuit. I don't want to do none of that shit. The NCAA. I put it on Twitter this week, but it was kind of as a joke. It's kind of true. NCAA has basically created Amsterdam, and they're like, you guys go over there, and everything you want to do over there is legal. We will monitor this over here. But so you want to go make your little backdoor deals and all these other types. You want to go transfers and all the other type of stuff. Do what you want to do. How many times you want to transfer? Hell, Catch, we just saw something. What was it the other day when the NCAA is talking about increasing? Was it the roster side, the transfer limit side?
Doing away with the 25-man. You know, there's currently a 25-85 rule in scholarships, and they may just do away with the 20. That was it. It hasn't been voted on yet. But
it's a possibility.
It's a possibility that they could do away with the 25, man, which would mean
you almost have to. If a team loses 8 players in the transfer portal, you've got to be
21 or 22, like Texas.
You've got to be able to restock, man. So yeah, they've got to tweak some things somewhere. So
yeah, in other words, they're saying you guys can do whatever you want. No, we don't give a damn. We really don't give a damn. We'll see you in September and help us make some money.
Just bottom line, casting that paycheck. That's right.
It's interesting. I think that there's been some questions. Let me see if I can find one. Here's a good one that I saw early in the day from Rocky. Wouldn't it cause some problems, Riffs, knowing Addison would get the most money? I think that's an interesting question that, like, all of these schools have to judge on a case-by-case basis. I personally, from what I've gathered, Xavier Worthy has a really nice NIL thing going on right now. But if Jordan Addison gets $2 million from whomever, and Bill, you know what? I can't do anything but give it up. He is the reigning fantasy football league champion for a league that has 3 of us. Not that guy down there in the blue Rivals shirt. Although I believe Bill has won a championship in one of his leagues. So
back-to-back years, he did.
Maybe Bill's just good. I don't know. We got to start giving Biddick some love.
Better than Alex. Go ahead.
I think about
this drive-by comment.
That was a stray for sure. I think that you look at a situation this past weekend with like a Jahdae Barron. I think Barron's not alone, Jason, in all of the guys on an 85-man roster probably trying to just size up what their worth is, right? I mean,
you got to be a little careful. The wrong person sizes up their worth and flirts around the coaches like, you know what, get the F out.
Well, and I think the situation with Barron was I think Texas communicated to him, you're going to make some really good NIL money here. But if you go into the portal and try to get a deal, every player on the roster is watching this. And if this ends up in a scenario where we're giving you more money, I think it's potentially problematic to everybody on the roster because they'll be like, oh, well, if I'm a starter, the thing to do at that point is to do what Jahdae Barron did. And then one way or another, they'll give me more money. If I'm making $200,000 a year, maybe this is how I get to $400,000, right? It's about maximum
a guy who's only
leverage.
started 4 games. I mean, what's DeMarvion Overshawn thinking if they say, okay, we're going to find more NIL money for Jahdae Barron?
I think Texas would have been prepared to let Barron go just to not be in the position where it would have looked like they bent down to, like, you know what I mean? And suddenly you've showed a roadmap for every guy on the roster to how to approach this. But I think these kids are smart, man. And oh, by the way, they have smart people directing most of them, right? There are some stupid people in the representation world, but by and large, a lot of these dudes have it together enough to, like, they're not eating out of cans. It's not like soup and.
Well, I hope those people are also going to help these people manage these young teenagers and a lot of just manage their money. I mean, I almost feel like every university needs to have some kind of program to help guide these young men, teenagers, even. They're suddenly have hundreds of thousands of dollars in their bank.
God, you sound so old, Jason.
Well, man, we see professional athletes piss their money away.
I've heard of who's going to help these poor little kids. Jason, do you worry about that in baseball? When guys get drafted, who's going to help these guys and what they're going to do with their money? Do you worry about that with the tennis players? Do you worry about that with young golfers? Do you worry about that when it comes to professional soccer players who get paid millions of dollars at teenage? Why are you so old just worried about this one particular? Well, these football players are getting they're young people that get paid all the time.
Yeah, and they probably have people helping them manage their money if they're smart. If a professional athlete gets drafted and gets a $5 million contract, Anwar, he has, I don't care what sport he's playing, he has someone managing his money. He has an agent. He has personal finance.
They have agents, Jason.
That's what I just said. Well, I hope these agents are helping these people these teenagers manage their money.
I think the thing, Jason, that would make you feel better is that I think it was a little – look, when I was personally signing athletes to NIL deals like 9 months ago, I was mostly dealing with players and their parents because NIL was so new. Like when I worked out my deal with Xavier Worthy, I did it with Xavier's mom. Like he's got real representation now, and I think the question will. I think the best players will absolutely have the people that you're talking about. If we were to take a guy like Denzel Okafor from last year, right? And I don't mean to call out Denzel. I'm just trying to think of a guy who played but wasn't considered
kind of a mid-level kind of player.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of a guy that plays.
Yeah.
And I don't know what his situation looks like in terms of representatives, but the thing that all of these reps want, and I remember I was negotiating with another lawyer of a Texas player last year. And this person was just a lawyer for one of the players. But the hope is that if you do a good job being a lawyer on the NIL front, that when these guys go pro, then you can just become their agent. Mm-hmm. So you're seeing a lot of agents who are serving as lawyers on off the field matters in hopes that if they do a good job there, when these kids do go pro, they'll have, a relationship that will allow that to just seamlessly go forward. I think the thing that's worrisome is one of the things that Anwar and I talk about sometimes with guys that get drafted late, or you're a undrafted rookie free agent and you get like a $25,000 signing bonus, and then you got to pay it all back because you got all of your fees, agent fees and trainer fees and all that stuff. I wonder what it looks like if 85 guys on the roster have representation, but in a case like Texas, like only 10 of them have been good. What actually happens with some of these relationships, and how good are they in the bottom of the roster? I think is one of the things that schools will have to keep an eye on. Like that's where they can really help, is just like they do with the agents. Like there's an agent day whenever it's time to like start thinking about the NFL. Best thing these schools can probably do is make sure that Johnny down the street isn't the NIL rep for any of these guys that really are trying to land deals. Although, Anwar, I'm guessing some of these dudes are going to be like LeBron James. They're going to bring their crew along for the ride. And at the end of the day, maybe some of the up-and-coming NFL agents of the future are going to be guys that started out representing their boys in NIL.
Look, at the end, Catch, if these were 18 and 19-year-old kids who had formed a business and became millionaires, we would praise them. We would say, amazing that what this whiz kid at 19 years old is able to form a $2 million business. If a kid was 19 years old and went on Shark Tank and made a pitch, and all of a sudden it was going to be a really successful business, we'd be like, oh my gosh, look at that. We see stories about 10-year-olds making cookies and becoming rich. So I don't, at the end of the day, like if they found a way to make money and become, whether it's 50,000, 100,000, $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, which is only the start. It's only going to get even more as time goes by. Man, I celebrate it. I don't want to stand in the way of it. I'm okay with it. Live your life, live your best life, and that's all I gotta say.
Who's a big agent? Like
Go ahead, Jason.
I was just talking to someone the other day. I was like, if you're an agent, an NFL agent, right? You can't sign any of these guys because they're still amateur athletes, right?
Guess you can, because isn't Jeff Nolly working with one of these guys, and he's an NFL?
See, I don't know if can you.
NFL agents are working with them on like NIL contracts.
Yeah,
they can. I just said that one of the guys I talked to last year was a family advisor or family lawyer, but he also had 6 NFL quarterbacks on his client list as an agent. So
yeah. Well, I'm just saying, if you're like the biggest agent in the world, I don't know who that would be. Wouldn't you be
right? Right now, it's Texas grad David Mulgeta. I mean, did you see the deal he just got for Deshaun Watson? Jesus.
Oh, yeah, that's right. But wouldn't you be wise to have like an NIL department?
Yes.
You kind of groom those guys, and then you become
those
their
exist
agent
for real.
When they go to the NFL. I mean, it's
because what they're doing, Jason, is they're saying, let me show you how much money I can get you now, in order to then secure them for the future for those NFL contracts.
Mm-hmm.
John Johnson says Congress can regulate this, and that is coming. No, it's not. What do you think, Congress? This is happening because the courts have said that the other way was illegal. And I just don't know what is Congress? Alex said earlier, like, knock, knock, who's there? Oh, hey, it's the NCAA to help. Like, right behind the NCAA helping is Congress helping.
Yeah.
Catch, what congressman?
Congress is going to solve the NIL problems. There it is. Let's all go home.
What congressman who represents a district in the SEC country is going to get reelected if he gets rid of NIL and screws over his program?
That'll be a bipartisan issue, I think, across the country.
There's not a single person that's going to get reelected if they stand in the way of this.
Yeah. All right. I hate to do it, guys. It's actually been a really fun Modcast so far. We got to jump into parting shots primarily because we got a noon deadline to get out. Alex, you were in Vegas this past weekend. Like, I have to believe you've got a great parting shot, so we'll go to you first.
Oh man, I just dude, Vegas is great. It's a great place for a draft. Can't wait to go back next year, man. I love being there live for the draft, but that thing at Vegas, that's going to be hard to top. It's just everything is just so big, and I mean, you guys know it's Las Vegas. The one thing I'll say, man, is that you forget, man. You get to Vegas, you're like, all right, Vegas. By the time you leave after like 4 days, you're like, all right, I'm going home. I gotta get the hell out of here. So glad to be back home, man. Glad to be back on the Modcast, but definitely a fun time in Las Vegas. I can't wait for next year for Kansas City. I think that'll be an interesting one. Probably plenty of good barbecue.
That's it.
You know,
Otherwise, Kansas City's pretty boring.
So
no offense to Kansas City, but you know.
I got some cool stuff in the downtown area. It's not
that's what they're going to have it apparently down on the main direct. I forgot the name of the street.
Is it like Power or something like that?
Something like that. Yeah,
something to that. It's actually pretty cool. I'll look. I've been there a few times. It's actually pretty cool.
You know what? All of my thoughts on Kansas City are built on visits from 20 years ago, so I apologize to Kansas City in the event that I'm judging it for shutting down at like 9 o'clock on a Tuesday. Like it felt like the whole city. It felt like when the barbecue joints closed down in Kansas City the times that I've been there.
District. There it is. Yeah.
That's where they're going to have it.
Power and Light. Maybe I need to go to Kansas City on a weekend. Jason, what do you got from a party shot standpoint?
Yeah, speaking of Vegas, I want to thank Anwar. I'm taking I don't know if you guys remember, I'm taking next week vacation, but so FYI, put that in your calendars.
I
my
totally
daughter
blocked that out.
Yeah. Well, the reason I'm taking it originally is my daughter, I guess, thankfully qualified for this gymnastics deal it's up in Colorado. So we're going to go up to Colorado for a couple of days to watch her compete. But I was like, man, I told my wife, I was like, let's go somewhere cheap, just the two of us before we go to Colorado at the end of the week. And Anwar mentioned I think it was on our Slack channel on where you're like, I want to see I don't know how Jason gets these cheap Vegas deals. So that got my wheels turning, man. So the wife and I are going to get on a plane on Sunday. It costs us like $29 to get out there, and we're using points to fly home. Anwar, I got a $25 a night room right in the middle of the strip. So it's at Bally's. It's not a high-end place, but right on the Vegas strip. So we're going to Vegas, about $100 out of pocket. I'll lose some money when I'm in Vegas, of course, but
what flight are you on? Soul plane? Like
no, we're flying Frontier going out, and then American. I'm using points on American to fly home. And then we actually fly home on Wednesday, and then turn around, boom, and get on a plane on Thursday and fly to Colorado with my daughter. All I can say is thank God for airline points, man. I should have a side gig as a travel agent because I haven't paid for a flight in 10 years, but
thank you for getting me on that train, Jason. I didn't pay for my flights to Vegas and back. I still have enough to take my family for a summer thing, just for paying the groceries and stuff on one of these Southwest cards, man. It's crazy.
Yep. You know our guy Ross from the Yak?
Yeah.
He literally he told me yesterday that in the next month he's taking a trip to Egypt, and he was told how to manipulate his miles in a way that he got like a round trip first class ticket to Egypt. And all he's having to pay are some miles and like $679 in a fuel tax.
Yeah,
but first class.
I definitely don't do first class. I'm sitting back by the toilets, but
first class to Egypt and back for
crazy,
$679.
Well, this summer, the second vacation is in July, and we're taking our kids. It was a trip we'd planned pre-COVID, and we've been putting it off for 2 years, but we're taking them to Curacao and using points, man. I'm not paying for any of the flights, and we could never do that crap without points. But yeah, I manipulate the system. But anyways, Anwar, thank you for putting that seed in my head. And I'm doing a 2-day Vegas trip, so I'll be coming home on a bender and then turning around and going up to Denver the next day. So that's my parting shot. So you will not see this old crotchety mug next week on the Modcast.
What are we going to do when you're actually old and crotchety? And
I am old and crotchety.
Old and crotchety.
You're saying it gets worse.
Anwar, batter up.
Just real quick. I know you have a hard out here, Catch. I just want to say, like, we talked about this before, and I just want to implore, Texas fans, college football fans, when a guy decides to enter in the transfer portal and leave and try to find happiness somewhere else, resist the urge to shit on that guy. Just resist the urge to talk crap about him or what you felt his career was or was not, or what you felt like he did or did not contribute to the team. Like, at the end of the day, if this person wants to find happiness somewhere else, just say, hey, hope they find happiness somewhere else and let it be. But, stop being that person. And this is what I equate it to, Catch. It's the typical, like, the guy that approaches the woman at the bar, tries to get her number, and then when she says no, he's like, I don't like you, no way. You want all that. Don't be that guy. Just let that thing go. Whatever these guys decide that they're out, just let them be. wish them well, and because it doesn't affect your day to day. Just be mature about that. That's what my parting shot is.
I agree with you. My parting shot. I've seen a couple of people just ask for handicapping the Jordan Addison. And by the way, I have way too many. I have wanted to call him Braylon Addison, Jason, for like the entire show. And I'm surprised it hasn't happened yet. Wasn't Braylon Addison like a decade ago, though? It's been a while.
I typed into Braylon Addison when I was Google searching for Jordan Addison's. Like, you're not alone, dude.
I've got way too many names in my head. But if I won't give you a percentage because Lord knows I will. No matter what percentage I give, it'll backfire, and then that percentage will be held against me forever. Alex, this is how I think I would set it up. I would make USC. They're like plus 300, and I think Texas is like minus 300. And Alabama might be like minus 500.
No, so you mean USC's minus 300, Texas is plus 300.
Yes.
And then,
sorry, I said it backwards.
But yeah.
I think USC is the heavy favorite. Mm-hmm. Texas is definitely in there. He's out playing ball in Southern California this week with Bryce Young. Probably shouldn't be completely ignored. Plus, Alabama's Alabama. I think those are the three schools that are legitimately in play. I don't really think there's anybody else. I don't know how to fully handicap it, but I think that's how I would do it. I think Texas is probably first underdog right now. And what that means, we'll see. USC should be considered the favorite and a substantial one at this point. But you know what? There's a reason why they just call them substantial favorites instead of just like something more definitive. And it's because sometimes substantial favorites don't work out. Look, for myself, and Drew says minus 300 is a big favorite. I know they're a big favorite. That's what I'm trying to convey. It's not a pick 'em. Okay. They are a big favorite, but I think Texas would be the first non-favorite school potentially in that mix. Alabama as well. I don't think there's anybody else. For myself, Anwar Richardson, Alex, Jason, the Andy over at myperfectfranchise.net, who will change your life if you allow him. No more working for the man. Like, make your dream come true, and let him lead you the way by showing how to launch your own business, launch your own franchise, and be your own number one guy. For all of us, and including Michael Rockman, who produced the video, we'll see you next week. Subscribe to the channel right now. Click that button. We'll see you next Thursday.